The phone that invented the future then died. In June 2010, a technology executive named John Rubinstein stood on stage at the All Things Digital conference and made a prediction that would prove tragically prophetic. He declared that tablets would eventually replace laptops for most consumers, that cloud computing would dominate, and that mobile apps would become the primary way people interact with technology. The audience applauded politely, but most dismissed his vision as wishful thinking from a desperate executive trying to save his dying company. Rubinstein wasn't just making wild predictions, though. He was describing the future that his company, Palm, had already invented 15 years earlier. By the time the world caught up to Palm's vision, Palm itself would be dead, killed not by market forces or superior competitors, but by a series of catastrophic business decisions that turned the smartphone pioneer into a cautionary tale. This is the story of how Palm created the template for every smartphone you've ever used, dominated an entire industry for over a decade, and then watched helplessly as their own innovations were perfected by others while they made every wrong decision possible until HP finally put them out of their misery for absolutely nothing. The story begins in 1992 when Jeff Hawkins, a brilliant engineer obsessed with artificial intelligence, started sketching ideas for a handheld computer on napkins at a Silicon Valley restaurant. Hawkins had been trying to build AI systems for years, but kept hitting the same wall. Computers weren't powerful enough, and batteries didn't last long enough. Instead of waiting for technology to catch up to his dreams, he decided to work backwards from human behavior. He spent months carrying around a wooden block the size of a shirt pocket, pretending to check his calendar and take notes, figuring out exactly what functions a portable device actually needed. In 1995, Hawkins and his partners Donna Dubinsky and Ed Colligan founded Palm Computing with $3 million in venture funding and a simple goal: create a handheld device that could sync with your desktop computer and fit in your pocket. The first Palm Pilot launched in April 1996 for $299 and immediately changed everything. Within 12 months, Palm had sold over 1 million units, making it the fastest-growing computer product in history at that time. The Palm Pilot did something no previous handheld had managed. It solved real problems without creating new ones. Palm's early success wasn't just about hardware, though. They created an entire ecosystem that wouldn't be matched until the iPhone App Store launched 12 years later. The Palm Pilot used a custom operating system called Palm OS that was specifically designed for touchscreen devices with limited processing power and battery life. Palm OS introduced concepts that seem obvious now, but were revolutionary in 1996. Instant-on functionality that let you access information in under 2 seconds, a unified contacts and calendar system that synced wirelessly with your desktop, and most importantly, handwriting recognition software called Graffiti that actually worked. While Microsoft was trying to cram full Windows functionality into handheld devices that were slow, crashed constantly, and had terrible battery life, Palm focused ruthlessly on simplicity and reliability. By 1997, Palm controlled 70% of the handheld computer market with devices that cost half as much as competitors and lasted 3 times longer on a single charge. The Palm 3, launched in March 1997, introduced the infrared port that let Palm users beam contact information and applications to each other instantly, creating the first truly social computing platform 15 years before anyone had heard of Instagram. The late 1990s marked Palm's golden age, but also the beginning of their corporate dysfunction that would eventually destroy them. In 1997, Palm Computing was acquired by U.S. Robotics for $44 million, which seemed like a smart move until U.S. Robotics was immediately acquired by 3Com for $6.6 billion. Suddenly, Palm found itself buried inside a massive networking company that didn't understand consumer electronics and treated their handheld division like an annoying side project. Despite the corporate chaos, Palm's engineering team continued innovating at breakneck speed. The Palm 5, launched in February 1999, was a design masterpiece, thinner than a pen, made from anodized aluminum, and featuring a rechargeable battery that lasted for weeks. More importantly, Palm was already working on wireless connectivity and color displays years before anyone else thought smartphones were commercially viable. By 1999, Palm devices were running third-party applications, playing games, displaying photos, and even connecting to email through add-on modems. Palm had essentially created the modern smartphone in everything but name, But their parent company 3Com was more interested in selling networking equipment to corporations than revolutionizing mobile computing for consumers. The year 2000 brought both Palm's greatest triumph and the beginning of their long decline into corporate hell. In March 2000, 3Com spun off Palm as an independent company in an IPO that was supposed to raise a few $100 million, and instead triggered one of the most insane speculative bubbles in stock market history. Palm's IPO opened at $38 per share and closed the first day at $95, giving the company a market valuation of $54 billion, more than General Motors, Ford, and Boeing combined. The stock price made no rational sense since Palm only had $12 million in quarterly profits, but investors were betting that handheld computers would eventually replace desktop PCs and Palm would dominate that transition. The bubble money should have given Palm unlimited resources to accelerate innovation and crush competitors, but instead it created a false sense of security that led to complacency and strategic blunders. Even worse, 3Com had retained a controlling stake in the newly public Palm and continued making decisions that prioritized short-term profits over long-term technology development. Palm was simultaneously the most valuable tech company in the world and completely unable to control its own destiny, a contradiction that would define the next decade of frustrated potential and missed opportunities. While Palm was dealing with corporate governance disasters, their engineering team was quietly building the future of mobile computing with almost no support from management. In 2002, Palm released the Trio 180, the first device that combined a Palm OS handheld with a full cell phone, creating what we now recognize as the first true smartphone. The Trio 180 featured a full QWERTY keyboard, always-on email access, web browsing, and the ability to install thousands of third-party applications from Palm's software ecosystem. By 2005, the Trio 650 had added a color display, digital camera, Bluetooth connectivity, and expansion slots that let users add everything from GPS navigation to MP3 playback. Palm had literally invented every core smartphone feature that would later make the iPhone famous, but they made two critical mistakes that handed the entire market to Apple. First, they licensed Palm OS to competitors like Sony and Handspring instead of keeping it exclusive, diluting their brand and fragmenting the ecosystem. Second, and far more damaging, they split the company in half in 2003, separating Palm OS development from hardware manufacturing in a move so strategically stupid it's still taught in business schools as an example of how to destroy a market-leading technology company through pure corporate incompetence. The iPhone announcement in January 2007 should have been Palm's moment of vindication. Apple had essentially copied the Trio's design and feature set, proving that Palm had been right about smartphones all along. Instead, it was the beginning of the end. Apple's iPhone succeeded not because it introduced revolutionary new technology, but because it perfected Palm's existing innovations with superior execution. The iPhone had a better touchscreen, more intuitive interface, faster processor, and most importantly, it was backed by a unified company with clear leadership and unlimited resources. Palm, meanwhile, was struggling with the disastrous consequences of their 2003 corporate split, trying to develop new hardware and software with two separate companies that could barely communicate with each other. The original iPhone actually had fewer features than the Trio 750. No copy and paste, no multitasking, no third-party applications, and no physical keyboard. But it worked smoothly and looked beautiful while Palm's devices had become clunky and unreliable. By the time Palm reunified the company in 2007 and started developing a response to the iPhone, Apple had already captured the premium smartphone market, and Google was preparing to flood the low end with Android devices. Palm's final act was a masterpiece of engineering excellence destroyed by terminal corporate dysfunction and spectacularly bad timing. In January 2009, Palm unveiled the Pre and WebOS at the Consumer Electronics Show, earning standing ovations and rave reviews from technology journalists who declared it the iPhone killer the industry had been waiting for. WebOS was genuinely revolutionary. It featured true multitasking with an elegant card-based interface, universal search that worked across all applications, seamless cloud synchronization, and wireless charging years before any competitor offered these features. The Pre's hardware was equally impressive, with a slide-out keyboard, gorgeous curved design, and build quality that matched Apple's premium standards. Palm had clearly learned from the iPhone's success and created a smartphone that was technically superior in almost every measurable way. The problem was everything else. Palm launched the Pre exclusively on Sprint, the smallest of the four major carriers, limiting their potential market to barely 25% of U.S. smartphone customers. They had no marketing budget compared to Apple's hundreds of millions in iPhone advertising. Most critically, WebOS launched with fewer than 30 applications while the iPhone App Store already had over 50,000 options, creating a chicken and egg problem that Palm never solved. The end came with shocking speed and pointless waste. Despite critical acclaim, the Pre sold only 1 million units in its first year compared to over 20 million iPhones, and Palm's cash reserves evaporated as they poured money into manufacturing devices they couldn't sell fast enough. In April 2010, HP acquired Palm for $1.2 billion, promising to integrate WebOS across their entire product line and create a unified ecosystem that would compete with Apple. HP's plan actually made sense. They were the world's largest PC manufacturer and could have built WebOS into millions of laptops, printers, and tablets, giving Palm software the scale it needed to survive. Instead, HP did absolutely nothing with Palm for over a year, then released the touchpad tablet in July 2011 with minimal marketing support and a $499 price that matched the iPad while offering far fewer applications. The touchpad was discontinued after just 49 days due to terrible sales, and in August 2011, HP announced they were killing all WebOS hardware development and considering selling the software division. Palm officially ceased to exist as a product brand, ending 15 years of innovation with a whimper rather than the bang their technology deserved. HP had spent $1.2 billion to acquire the future of mobile computing and then thrown it away for no rational reason anyone has ever been able to explain. Palm's legacy lives on in every smartphone you've ever used, though few people realize how much of our modern mobile technology was invented in Silicon Valley offices 15 years before the iPhone made it mainstream. The touchscreen interface, application ecosystem, wireless synchronization, social sharing features, and even the basic form factor of modern smartphones were all pioneered by Palm engineers who understood the future of computing when their competitors were still trying to shrink desktop PCs into handheld devices. More importantly, Palm's rise and fall offers crucial lessons about innovation, execution, and corporate governance that remain relevant as new technologies emerge. Having the best technology isn't enough if you can't execute a coherent business strategy, maintain unified corporate leadership, and market your innovations to consumers who don't yet understand why they need them. Palm created the template for modern mobile computing but lost the market to companies that perfected their innovations with better design, superior marketing, and most importantly, the patience and resources to execute long-term vision instead of chasing quarterly profits. The next time you unlock your smartphone, check your calendar, or download an application, remember that you're using technology that was invented by a company that no longer exists, killed not by market forces or technological obsolescence, but by human decisions that transformed world-changing innovation into a business school case study about how not to run a technology company.